Ilya, you had a question about Q&A session?
So yeah, actually to the book of Job, right? You said we are partners. Can God be cruel as
You know what? I'll tell you. The book of Job, Iyov, is not one of the typical texts studied in all the best. I'll see you. Studied all the best. Studied in yeshiva. Okay. If you'll show me a verse from Chumash, from 5 books of Moses, I'll be able to recognize it. You'll show me a verse from book of Job, Iyov. You know, it's not something which people usually know like this. So I once was at a session by a therapist, a Jewish, observant, Orthodox Jew who was a therapist. He wanted to teach us several things about therapy and about, actually not only about, but specifically about relationships and everything else. I mean, he gave us a text. Words in English, typed up on the computer, just a printout. And he asked us, what do you think this is from? People around circle were saying, I don't know, it's from some book of psychology. It's from some. It's this theory. It's that theory of book. It's a book of. It's something written by Sigmund Freud. It's something written by this therapist, by that therapist. He said, no. What I just gave you is word for word is translation of book of Iyov into English. Book of Job. Book of Iyov has very unexpected statements. And there's a reason for it. Okay? So, now, you want to ask me about the actual things which are written in the book of Iyov, Job, or you want to ask me about the very fact that God made somebody suffer?
yes,
Okay.
especially a Jew who is supposed to be a partner?
One second. A Jew, Iyov, nobody says Jew, Iyov. Nowhere it says that Iyov was a Jew. It doesn't say it anywhere. No, one second. That's different. Iyov was not a Jew. So, right. So, number one, in Judaism, everywhere, Shabbos. Shiva Harosho. Now, number one, it's not Shabbos. I say good, whenever I see easy, because I usually see easy on Shabbos, I say good Shabbos. So, number one, in Judaism, there's everywhere. There's always.
He's not going to know how to act now. He's going to be shaking his head, scratching his head. Shabbos, man.
There are.
From a partnership perspective.
Okay. First of all,
Iyov did everything that God asked.
Nobody says. First of all, Iyov was not Jewish. That's for sure. Now, our sages discuss about Iyov. First of all, there are opinions in Medrash that the entire book of Iyov is actually are events that never happened. It's a metaphor. Just like another example, which actually I just discussed it with somebody in my conversations. There's a book of Kuzari. It's a book written by Rabbi Yehuda Levi of a debate. Kuzari, that's how you say in Hebrew, Chazars. Chazars that converted to Judaism. It speaks about the questions and the debates that Chazars have, that Chazars have had as they were converting to Judaism. But Rabbi Yehuda Levi, who wrote the book, said it's not a historical book. It's only based on everything else. It's what he uses as an example. So in other words, it's only a metaphor. Rabbi Yehuda Levi wrote the book about Chazar's conversion. He himself said it's not a historical book. He wrote this book 5 centuries after Chazar's conversion. So he never met anyone who ever met Chazars during the times of their conversion. But he used it as a springboard for his discussions. So there are opinions who will tell you that Book of Eov is just a metaphor. It never actually happened. And then there's another opinion that actually says that Eov, it says that Eov was a righteous person. It says Eov was a righteous person.
He wasn't Jewish?
Huh?
Is he Jewish or not Jewish?
He was not Jewish. He was a righteous person, but he was a righteous person at that time. And what happened before? The Torah says, the Torah doesn't say. At that time, when things were happening, he was a righteous person. But there's a whole history before that. You know, and they say whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So Eov's prehistory is very different.
Do we have documents?
We have documents.
Okay.
Now,
Then why are they not included in that book?
because it was not important. This is a very good point. I'll just say, Talmud says that when Amalek wanted to attack the Jewish nation, he went to several other authorities of the world to consult. You know, they say, now, Putin is fighting with Russia. I mean, Putin is fighting with Ukraine. He has sanctions, this and that. So they say somebody tells Putin, you got yourself in so much trouble. Why, when you just started attacking Ukraine, why did you consult with Rabinovich? Putin says, which Rabinovich? He says, any Rabinovich. So he went to consult with Rabinovich, but there were many Rabinoviches. So Amalek consulted with several people, several authorities, and it says that one of them was Jethro, who was Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law, and actually, my wife, she was just showing me pictures and videos when she was in Israel last time. She was at Jethro's gravesite in Israel. We know where he's buried. Actually, Juzim made a mosque there over his gravesite. But Juzim are friendly to Israel, not to Jews. She went there, showed me pictures of her with the mosque. So Yitro was adamantly against it, against attacking the Jews. Then there was Bolok, who was for it, supporting it. And Eov was the one who sat and kept quiet. He figured, he had the position of, I don't want to instigate against the Jews because I know it's wrong, but I don't want to defend them either. Whoever is going to be the victorious side, I'll join them. But I don't need to stick my neck out for the Jews. So Medrash says that whatever he experienced later on in life, even though at the time when the story of Eov was told, he was a righteous person, which is correct, but he did not defend the Jews when they needed to be defended. And this is why he got what he got. And Medrash tells us this is the message that, Eli Wiesel, he was one of the expert witness in the court against Swiss banks that withheld money of the Jews who died in the Holocaust. Swiss banks, as you know, made millions and millions of dollars from the Jews who died in the Holocaust. Why? Because I said the people have perished. You don't have the number. You don't have the ID. We don't have to give you the money. And these banks were owned by Swiss government, either owned completely or in part by Swiss government. And now the Jewish Claims Committee was coming to the Swiss government. They were saying, you made all these billions of dollars on these families. You need to pay up. It's true that you don't know. You claim that you don't know who the families are. We don't know. Maybe your claim is correct. You don't know who the families are. But you need to return this money to the Jewish nation, to the Jewish community. So that's why they wanted them to reinstate this very money, and that was the Jewish Claims Committee. So Swiss government came with their biggest defense was, ideological defense was, we did not help Hitler. We were neutral during World War II. We did not help Hitler, which is correct. They were neutral. So Eli Wiesel was the expert witness of the Jewish community, and he famously said back then, it is correct that you were neutral, but you know what? Neutrality never helps the victim, always the perpetrator. Being neutral does not mean being good. This is one of the most important. A peaceful person is not the one who does not fight. If I never fight, it doesn't mean that I'm a peaceful person. A peaceful person is the one who fights if needed for the victim. Just like today in the Western world, a claim is often made that the vast majority of Arabs are not terrorists, vast majority of Muslims are not terrorists. Why do we need to punish all these Muslim countries with all of this, whatever it is, or they make claim about people who live in Gaza today. A vast majority of people living in Gaza are not Hamas. They're not terrorists. Why do they need to suffer because of Israel's military actions? So what is the answer? It is true that maybe a vast majority of people living in Gaza are not members of Hamas. It's true. But it does not mean that they're peaceful people. Well, but they're not fighting against anyone. I've got news for you. If you are not fighting against anyone, does not mean yet that you are peaceful. Vast majority of Germans during World War II were not Nazis. Nazis were, 30% of Germans during World War II.
That's it?
Yeah. The rest, 70%, were not Nazis. None of these 70% were actively killing Jews.
They were complacent.
But they were complacent. A peaceful German is not somebody who was sitting on his front porch watching how Jews are being exterminated. That's not a peaceful German. A peaceful German would be somebody who would take up arms, who would take a weapon to defend those Jews. Or hide them. He would be a peaceful German. A peaceful Muslim is not the one who is sitting in his hut over there, God knows where he lives, and watches how his neighbor is blowing up the Jews. He's not a peaceful Muslim. A peaceful Muslim is the one who stops his neighbor from blowing up the Jews. You need to be peace requires active involvement. Pacifism is not peacefulness. And this is the lesson that Talmud tells us that we need to learn from Eov. Eov was a righteous person at that time when the story happened. And he did not actively portray any evil. But you know what? When Jews were attacked, he was a peaceful German. By the way, I'll tell you, I don't know if I think I mentioned to you before, I have a story to tell you. I just told it to my son just recently. I'll tell you, I'll make it out of l'chaim, and then there's a story I have to tell you about this. It's a story that left me traumatized for the rest of my life, I think. L'chaim.
Okay. Sure,
Yes. I told it to my son. We were driving, and somehow it came up. I told my son I actually couldn't drive. I pulled over to tell a story to my son. I felt like I couldn't drive. This is a story. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia. Just FYI, I lived in Atlanta, Georgia. If somebody tells you they lived in Atlanta, Georgia, they never lived in Atlanta, Georgia. Somebody who lives in Atlanta will never tell you they lived in Atlanta. It's Atlanta, Georgia. It's not Atlanta, Georgia. You get it, right? Yeah. Okay. So I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Chabad rabbi of Georgia in Sandy Springs, which is a suburb of Georgia, a suburb of Atlanta. He was always he's the head Chabad rabbi of Georgia. I was a yeshiva student, and I lived there. So for holiday, like for Pesach, Sukkot, summers, I was there. He always asked me to deliver matzah, like I was there, like usually a couple of weeks before the Pesach holiday starting. So I was home, and he would always ask me, like there were people in the far-flung areas of Georgia who needed matzah, like he knows there's a Jew in some southern town, southern village, an hour away, 2 hours away from Atlanta. And he would always call me and ask me to bring matzah to them, and I did it. I was very happy to do it. I borrowed my mother's car. Actually, I drove my mother to her work, and I would drive there. My goal was to be back by the time my mother finished her work, but he would always tell me that when you are in this whatever town it is, ask the Jew who you bring matzah to if there are any other Jews. He would always give me extra matzah in case you meet another Jew. Always ask him if there's another Jew. Maybe there's another Jew. Maybe you'll find somebody. And he told me, if you want, you could also, back then there was such a thing called phone book. You know what a phone book is?
Of course.
You are old.
Thanks,
So, there was one such a thing called a phone book. It says, look up on the phone book, maybe you'll... yeah. You know what a book is? You are old. So he told me, look up on the phone book, whatever. So I always had this like extra matzah with me, and I really want to make sure. So I'm bringing matzah to this person, and I am asking them if there are any other Jews in your village, and he says, no, there's no other Jews here. I'm the only Jewish family here, but I didn't believe him. I'm pulling up at the gas station. I asked him for a phone book. I look at the phone book, and I remember I find Susan Stein in the phone book. Susan Stein? Wow! I feel like I'm in Brooklyn, New York. I drive over, I find the address. It was before GPS. Like I had those paper maps. You remember where that is? Wow! I had, I have, I had the paper maps, atlas. I had the atlas, those spiral bound atlas. I look up the street.
Called the road maps.
Roadmap, whatever it is, and I drive over to the Susan. I remember Susan Stein. I knock on the door. This elderly lady opens up. I'm like, "Hi, are you Miss Susan Stein?" She says, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, I'm Rabbi Belinsky. I'm here from Chabad of Georgia. Happy Passover." She looks at me. She says, "Hello. Welcome," whatever. She welcomes me into her house. I come in. Now, you have to understand, in the South, when you knock on somebody's door, they will always welcome you into their house. This is something you need. Coming from a city like ours, you have to understand. In the South, there's no such a thing as you knock on somebody's door and they won't welcome you and give you food. Okay, there's no such a thing. Okay, in the South. So I thought if I'm telling you Happy Passover, I'm from Chabad of Georgia. She says, "Sure, come in." It means that she knows who Chabad of Georgia is, but apparently that's what people in the South do. And I, coming from Brooklyn, New York, didn't know that. Okay, so she's welcoming me in, and I'm sitting down. I'm telling her I'm from Rabbi Yossi New, Chabad of Georgia, and she looks at me. She says, "Yeah," and I'm like, "I'm there. I'm from a synagogue, Jewish center." And she says, "Synagogue? What synagogue?" And I'm like, "Oh, synagogue? Like a Jewish place?" And she says, "Oh, a Jewish place?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she starts talking to me. And slowly I begin to understand that Susan Stein is not Jewish. She is German. Not only do I understand that Susan Stein is not Jewish, I also understand that she actually was born in Germany. And her, as she's telling me, her father came to the States before the war in late 30s because he got a job there. It was like a German corporation that sent him here, whatever it is. So he never lived in Europe through the war, but he is German. Her native language is German, and she lived here. She was a little kid when she came here. Her life was all in America. She spoke English without any accent, and I'm like, it took me a while to kind of process it because it was like a paradigm shift for me. Who I'm talking to, what I'm talking about. It was like. And then, part of me, okay, what am I doing here? I need to get out of here. Why am I even talking to this person? For sure, she doesn't need any matzah that I brought. That's for sure. You know what I mean? And then,
thank you for the crackers.
And then, I'm telling her, and then she's telling me, I'm telling her I'm Jewish and this and that. I'm trying to explain to her. I'm trying to justify why I even knocked on her door because I'm Jewish and I thought you might be Jewish. Whatever. I'm trying to explain why I'm even here because she's still confused why I'm even talking to her. Just like I'm confused why I'm talking to her, she's confused why I'm talking to her. Okay, two people talking to each other, both are confused why you're talking to each other. And then she hears that I'm Jewish. And she hears, and she says, "You know what? It's true." Okay, I'm sorry, I might not be able to say it. It's actually, I'm sorry. She says, "You know what?" I'm sorry. She says, "You know what? You know what? It's true. Hitler might have done some wrong things when it comes to the Jews." And I'm looking at her very confused. I'm like, I don't think I said anything, but my face obviously said something. And she's like, "No, you see, I lived here in America during World War II. And I just felt very bad that Hitler got such a bad PR. And I was still I still couldn't, like, I couldn't understand what she was saying. I still was like processing. I mean, you have to understand, I was like 18 years old, okay? And I'm still trying to understand what she's saying. I never heard anything like this in my life. And she says, yeah, it's true. Hitler, I think when Hitler wanted to kill all the Jews, I think he overdid it. But you know what? Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. But he did a lot of good things for Germany. She's just listing me all the things that he lifted up German economy, and he helped Germans socially. And in the world stage, Germany was really, he lifted up Germany on the world stage. And he helped the middle class in Germany, the working class. And she starts telling me all of the things politically. He brought stability because after World War I, there was a chaos, and he brought stability. And he was the unifying force of the entire nation. And she starts telling me all these things, which I actually looked up afterwards were historically correct. That's what bothered me the most. Yeah, but with the Jews, I mean, okay, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes some mistakes. Okay, so with the Jews, he made a mistake. Okay, fine. But why does he have to get such a bad PR because of this one mistake? And I was sitting there. I'll be honest with you. I was dumb. I didn't know what to say. Maybe it's better that I didn't know what to say, because if I would have known what to say, probably they would have to call police on me. I was for the first and maybe actually last time in my life, I was lost for words. I'm like. I didn't know what to say. And she was telling me, yeah, but now she was telling me that her father, who was German, who lived here in America during World War II, he came here to America right before World War II, like late 30s, right after she was born. She was like 5 years old when she came to America, whatever, do the math, I don't know exactly, She was telling me that her father was always saying that, Hitler did some bad things with regards to Jews, but who cares? He did many other good things. And the fact he lost in World War II, that in her mind, the fact that Hitler lost in World War II was one of the unfair events of the world's history. Okay? And I was sitting there, and I'm like, can I get out of here? Can I just leave? And she went, but you see, she was very non-combative. She was not nasty. She was a nice person. She was very polite. She was saying it's just her opinion about the world affairs. She didn't hate Jews. She said she agrees that what Hitler did to Jews was wrong. She was with me on that.
With all the good stuff.
So what do I answer to that? See, if somebody comes to me and says, you Jews deserve to die, I tell them? Tell them, you're an animal, get out of here. She didn't say that. She said, yeah, I guess he a little overdid it. Okay. What do I say to that? So this is Eov. This is Job. This is Job. Exactly. This is exactly what Job is. This is what Talmud says was Job's problem. It's Susan Stein in a southern village in the middle of Georgia.
She later became the
Rabbi,
king of Colombia.
Eov in Russian? Rabbi, Eov это in Russian?
Eov.
Eov.
Eov, это...
In Russian?
No.
Eov, yeah, sure. Yeah.
And what was Job?
Job is English.
In English?
Eov is Hebrew and...
Russian
That's right. There's no jobs in Russian.
Russian brother.
So,
Jobs in Russia.
Rabbi, to kind of, it's not to extend
actually you brought up that same point, is the rabbi, in retrospect, you can make a decision that this was right, he needed to wait, and so forth, right? But he also wasn't a fair partner to, rabbi wasn't, he could have communicated, that's not typically how you would do business. What was the purpose of him? Was it a task, or was it or was it a faith?
Very good question. Okay. Dennis, you're asking a very good question. I want to make a l'chaim. Do you have a l'chaim over there? You asked me a very good question. You see? This is a very good question. Excellent question. Thank you, Dennis. You see? L'chaim. Are you drinking l'chaim over there? L'chaim. L'chaim. Okay, fine. Dennis has a very long ride home. I could carry you home, you know? Oh, so,
It's longer than...
what?
It's longer than that.
Through the shortcut right here in the back.
Rabbi, you already drunk and drive.
So, look this. You will tell me that the Rebbe could have told him, listen, I know that in exactly 10 months from now, the price is going to go up. Okay? Why didn't the Rebbe tell it to him?
Or he could have did something along those
So we have more
There's-
faith.
There's something in between the two, right? Like, you know.
So I will tell you two answers. Two things. Number one. It's a famous Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, once had a very wealthy businessman come to him, and now he lived in the town of Lubavitchi. Back then it was Belarus, and now it's actually right on the border, but it's in Russian Federation. It's part of Russia right now. Have you? None of you have been in Lubavitchi, right? Okay. It has become a Hasidic enclave for a purpose that it was really off the beaten path. Okay, it was really middle of nowhere. Like till this very day, there's no highways or trains or anything going anywhere near there. It's the middle of nowhere. Okay. To get there, you have to take a train, then a bus, and then a car, and then there's the balota, there's a swamp you need to cross to get there. It's impossible to get there. Okay, till this very day.
Ivan Susani was taking them to
That's right. That's right. Now, so in this town, which is literally in the middle of nowhere, the wealthy businessman of that town, which you could probably imagine how wealthy he had to be if he lived in this town, but the wealthy businessman of Lubavitch wanted to build himself a house. Now, today, to build a house, you need to buy property. Back then, there was either land that belonged to somebody already. If nobody built a house there, you could build a house there. There was just empty land. Why not? So this businessman came to Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said he wants to live on the same street as him. And he's asking bracha, he's asking blessing because he wants to build a house right next to him, right next to Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek looked at him, and Tzemach Tzedek said he should not build a house there, and he should build a house somewhere else. This businessman was personally offended. He thought that the Rebbe is maybe he's not casting him aside. Maybe he's not worthy enough to be living on a street with the Rebbe. Maybe he is not holy enough. Maybe the Rebbe doesn't accept him. Or whatever. He was personally insulted. But he did what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe says to build a house somewhere else. He built a house somewhere else. As soon as he finished building his house, there was a famous fire in Lubavitch. And the street where Tzemach Tzedek lived, one of the houses on that street was the center of this fire. Tzemach Tzedek's own house was completely burned down to the ground. So this businessman comes to Tzemach Tzedek and says, Rebbe, I have two things to tell you. Number one, I promise I will personally pay for the building your house. It burned down. I'll pay you. But second of all, I want to ask you a question. If you knew this fire was about to happen, why didn't you tell to me back then when I was planning to build a house here? You should have told me it's going to be a house here. It's going to be a fire here. Don't build your house here. Build it on the next street over. You'll be saved. Tell me that. I spent all these months thinking terrible things. Why don't you tell me straight out? Tzemach Tzedek tells him, if I would have known that this fire would happen, I myself would have moved. I felt from up high something that told me that you should not build your house here. Why? I myself didn't know. A prophet is not somebody who has all the information about everything that will happen in the future. There's no prophet knows all information. There's some information which is revealed. The Rebbe somehow received a piece of information that this person should buy this fur. Why? I have no clue, but it's very possible the Rebbe himself did not know why.
Right, but he could say that, he could pick up the phone, he could say, trust me, like, look, I have a feeling this is going to work out. Like,
I'll tell you.
That was a little bit between the two extremes. It's like, I don't want to talk to you.
I will tell you, I'll tell you something else. In here in Baltimore lives a rabbi, Igor knows him well, Rabbi Avram Volovik. He's on the same street as Igor. Okay? Avram Volovik's father has the following story. When Avram Volovik's father, now
What's the last name?
Volovik or Walowik.
Oh, okay.
Walowik. In English, it's Walowik. It's Volovik. Okay? So, Volovik. Okay? Volovik. Okay. When Avram Volovik's father, when it's like this. Avram Volovik's father comes from Lubavitcher family, and he's Lubavitcher Chosid. His mother does not come from Lubavitcher family, and they come from Lithuanian family, Litvischer family, and her father, in other words, the father-in-law, always was dreaming that his daughter will get married to somebody who is a proper, what's called Lithuanian Jew, who learned in Kollel the whole time, but his daughter became Lubavitcher, and she wanted to get married to Lubavitcher guy, and her father was adamantly against it. So he figured he'll go to the Rebbe to complain. And maybe because the Rebbe was always saying that every marriage should be with the blessing of the parents, he'll come to the Rebbe and he'll say that I'm against it. So the Rebbe will concede, and the Rebbe will say that they should not get married. So he comes to the Rebbe. This is Avram Volovik's father, right? His father-in-law, okay? Come to the Rebbe and say that they want to get married, but he told them, Ich gleich nicht den Shidduch. I don't approve of that couple, of that union. The Rebbe looks at him very, very seriously, pauses for a second, and he says, but what should I do if I know that up in heaven they do approve of this union? The Rebbe told him. So this is what the father said. I was not a Lubavitcher Chosid. I would not ask Lubavitch Rebbe for advice ever in my life. I was not planning to listen to Lubavitch Rebbe. I don't think he's anything, but there's one thing I knew. He is not a liar. And if he says that up in heaven they do approve of this union, it cannot be that he is making it up. So once he told me that up in heaven they do approve of this union, I stepped back. And I said, okay. And they got married, and the rest is history. They, one of their sons, I know many other of their children. I know his brother Yitzchak very well, and I know several of his brothers and sisters.
So are they Lubavitch now?
Yeah, all of them. So now, Alan, I'll see you. So
See you Friday. You're not gonna
see you
be
Friday. Yeah, sure, I'll be here. I'm going to New York just for one day. I'm in and out. I'm going in and out. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I want to be back tomorrow night. So now, so my point is, how much do you believe the Rebbe? You see, this is the point. You see, Dennis, Dennis, the question you're asking me is a very good and very important question. It's like this. You could always say, you know what? God told me to keep Shabbos, right? And I have to keep Shabbos. God told me to come to Shul on Shabbos. I have to come to Shul on Shabbos. But you know what? I have so many difficulties. And I have my family, I have my business, I have my friends, I have my this, I have my that. And I don't come to Shul on Shabbos. I don't keep Shabbos. But you know what? If God himself would appear to me and make a miracle that when I get into my car on Shabbos to go shopping, my engine blows, then I would not go shopping anymore on Shabbos because God made a miracle and my engine blew. So do you know what the answer is? The answer is, one second, God already told you not to go shopping on Shabbos. Why do you need something? Why do you need something else from God? In other words, Einstein said, Einstein said, be careful of negative people. They have a problem for every solution. Einstein said it. Okay? Now, Isaac Newton said, for a believer, every question has an answer. For a non-believer, every answer has a question. Okay? So in other words, no matter what good of a proof God will give you, you could always ask, why didn't God give me a bigger proof? You could always ask that. No matter, and there's no end to it. So, why don't we nip it in the bud? God already told you, do this and this, don't do this and this. That's it. You'll tell me, but God could have given me a bigger proof. It's true. But if God would give you a bigger proof, you'll come back and say, but He could even give me a bigger proof. It's true, He could have. And then again even bigger, and then again even bigger, and then again bigger. So God says, why is this? Because God always gives us. You see, we have a problem. Do you know what our problem is? Our problem is that God is too kind. Do you know what is different? I learned it with my kids. My kids are already, some of them in their 20s, some of them in their teenage years. The most difficult thing for me was to give freedom to my kids. Why? Because to give freedom to my kids means to allow them to fail. I have to allow them to fail. I can come and force them. No, you have to do this and this. And maybe they'll do it. But you know what's going to happen next time? Why did you do only this and this? You should have also done this and this. Why did you only lock me in my room and allow me to jump out of the window? You should have also put bars on the window. And when you put the bars on the window, say, but why were the bars on the window so weak that I couldn't break them? You knew that I break the bars on the window. You should put stronger bars. Okay. So the answer is, there's no end to it. God, as a good parent, allows us to fail. This is the ultimate test as a parent, to allow your children to fail. And I learned it. That's the hardest thing. For me as a parent, that was the hardest thing, to allow my children to fail. I want my kids to feel on their own tuchas the consequences of their own action or inaction, whatever it is. You know what? Yes. Don't do your homework. See what teacher says. Do this and this. See what happens. Okay? In the big things or in the small things. And you're lucky if it's only homework. Okay? God does the same thing. There's no end to how much God can control us. Just like there's no end how much you'll be controlling your kids. Okay, there's no end. And they will always come back to you with a complaint. But why did you, once they fail, why didn't you control us even more? That's what they'll say. And they'll be right. You could have controlled them even more. You could have put handcuffs on them. But once you put handcuffs, why did you allow us to break out of handcuffs? The handcuffs were not strong enough grade. God tells us what to do. And he leaves it at that. If you have enough, my daughter, I'll tell you now, my daughter was, when she was living in New York, she was teaching in school, and once she had to teach like a very difficult class. And she was asking me for advice how to deal with those it was a very difficult situation. So we figured out kind of a plan. It was a very difficult situation. She came in a very unpleasant time for this specific class, for this group of girls. She came in and she wrote, "What do you despise the most? What is it that you don't like the most?" And they were screaming something. And she wrote on the board, on the whiteboard, she wrote, "Control." And they all said, "Yeah, we don't like control. That's what we don't. We don't like when people control us." It was like young teenagers, Yes, controls. This is what we don't like. And then, as they were all yelling and screaming, she wrote on the left of the word control, she wrote, "Self-control." And they all quieted down. She says, "Tell me, what do you think? I know you all don't like control. What do you think about self-control?" You see, if when I get into a car to go shopping on Shabbos, whenever I eat pork, lightning would hit the building and the restaurant would burn down, that would be God controlling me. But God doesn't want that. God tells me, don't eat pork. God tells me, come to shul on Shabbos. And God leaves it up to me because God wants me to have self-control. You'll say, but God could have controlled me more. He could have. He doesn't want to.
Right, that has to be self-free choice, right?
Because he wants us to be partners. That's what we spoke about before. A partner is not a robot. Right. See, when you make a robot, when you make a self-driving car that delivers your packages, this self-driving Tesla is not your partner. The self-driving Tesla is your robot. It's a tool. God does not want us to be robots. He wants us to be partners. Partners means having free choice. You will always say, but God could have limited our free choice. That's the point. He didn't, because he wants us to be partners, not robots.
But do you think deciding now than before, with all the devices, all the environment we are brought in?
And the answer is no. Every era has its own challenges. Our challenge today is the devices. The challenge back then was the lack of devices. Okay? Now our challenge is that we are bombarded with all the information back then. The challenge was the lack of all that information. Do you know, I love reading the Hasidic stories from a couple hundred years ago. I love reading it. First of all, it gives me a lot of wisdom and lessons, but also it gives me a glimpse of life back then. And one of the characteristics of life back then was lack of information.